minutes. So good morning to Prasenjeet Yadav, who is a National Geographic explorer and photographer. So in the true National Geographic way, he was a scientist turned photographer. We have a tendency to have a lot of people doing that when they get in contact with some great photos. So how you doing this morning?
I'm doing all right. This is afternoon for me, actually. This is 5
that's right.
p.m. in India. So I'm looking forward to the festival. And thank you for having me here. I'm really excited.
Well, we're super excited to have you here as we get to hear a little bit about your work with all the various biomes and ecosystems within India. And then maybe we'll get a little tease of a new project you're working on in the Indian Himalaya. I see that there might be some, maybe we'll get to questions and answers. Great.
Yeah.
So without further ado, let's jump right into your presentation. That way we have time for some questions after we learn a little bit more about you and the work that you're doing in India and around the world.
Sounds great. Can you see the screen?
Can see the screen. It's a nice, there we go. We got your presentation up. All right, I will step out and let you begin.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Wes and Joe, for having me here and for organizing this festival. I think it's fantastic. We are all sitting in our homes in different parts of the world, but still kind of connected and together. So yeah, I'm sitting here in India. And as you all know, India is the place of temples, tigers, and Taj Mahal. But today I'm going to introduce you to some lesser known species and some more unique and different landscapes which are found in India that probably you might not have heard of. And one of that landscape is the Sky Islands of the Western Ghats of India. And this project was funded by Geographic a couple of years ago. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So where are these Sky Islands? As you can see, this is the southern part of India. If you imagine the map of India, all the green part in the south is what we call the Western Ghats, which is a global biodiversity hotspot. And within the Western Ghats, the southern peak mountains that you see in this map, those are the places that we call the Sky Islands. And that is the project, those are the landscape that we will be looking at today in this presentation. So what are Sky Islands? Sky Islands are these mountains which are peeking out of the clouds. And just like oceanic islands, they are surrounded by clouds instead of water. And because they are high up in the clouds, they are called as Sky Islands. These Sky Islands are home to this unique forest system called as the Shola forest. And these forests are very moist in nature, and all the major rivers in South India kind of originate in this landscape. And they are home to these unique species, such as this Thalia anamalayana, which is a kind of a lizard, which is found only on these mountain tops, as well as this crazy looking Rochester signatus, or a star-eyed frog, which is again found only on the Sky Islands on the mountain tops of the Western Ghats. Interestingly, these forests are really small in size. They are not very big, and they are floating in the sea of grasslands, where grasslands are on the hills and the forests are in the valley. And the grasslands have their very own species, which are found only on these grasslands. This is called as Nilgiri tar, which is a mountain ungulate, mountain goat, which is found only in the Western Ghats. Probably it has a global distribution of less than 300 square kilometers. Also, this horseshoe peat viper, which is one of the rarest snakes in the Western Ghats, but again, a snake which prefers to live in the grasslands of the Sky Islands. Now, this project started a couple of years ago, and I got sucked into this landscape because of its beauty and its dramatic nature. And I started looking for newer species to document. And on one of those expeditions, I went looking for interesting plants and frogs. So on the fringes of these forests are these plants. This plant is called as cobra lily, again, a endemic species to these mountaintops. But on one of those expeditions, we went out looking for specifically for this small frog in the Western Ghats. And it took us more than 10 days to get permits and a couple of days to walk up. And this particular day, we were walking entire day. And around the evening time, when the light was low, we reached the forest patch where we were looking for that specific frog. And I was with the researchers, and they knew the call of the frog because they had heard it before. And we started hearing this frog call from this small 3-meter area. And because of its small size and amazing camouflage, it took us more than 3 hours to locate this guy. This is called as Nyctibatrachus minimus, and it's one of the smallest frogs in India. It is, as you can see, it's smaller than my thumbnail. But these mountains are full of these beautiful as well as unique species. But the real species that brought me up on these mountains were birds. This is called as black and orange flycatcher. It is one of these tiny understory birds which does not fly long distances, and it's found only on these mountain tops. And these understory birds can actually spend their entire life within one show-lap forest patch, which could be a size of 1 or 2 hectares. That's it. So they spend their entire life in that much small forest areas. And all these understory birds came into this landscape almost 7 million years ago and became part of the Sky Islands. Similar to black and orange flycatcher, this white-bellied shortwing, or now known as sholakili, is also found only on these mountain tops. This bird was thought to be one single bird, which was found across the Western Ghats. But after starting to work with some of the scientists, they found that the story is entirely different. I collaborated with Dr. Robin Vijayan and Dr. Ruma Ramakrishnan, who were going onto these mountains to study these birds. They were catching these birds, they were taking their morphometric analysis, essentially taking their morphometrics, taking their blood samples to do genetics and get phylogenetic data. And after working for years, they realized that what was thought to be one single bird is not actually one. All these birds, when they came, they were living at the base of this Western Ghat mountain. But during the last glacial period, around 3-4 million years ago, the climatic conditions changed in a way that the mountains moved up from the base to the mountaintops, and they took the species with them on the mountaintops. And because these species went up on the mountaintops, they got isolated from each other, many of these species. You can see there are these two really big gaps in these mountains, and those gaps became geographic barriers for the genetic movement. And over the years, this one single bird, which was thought to be across Western Ghats, turned out to be not one, not two, but 3 different birds, as you can see in the slide, on 3 different mountains. And it's entirely a new genus of birds to science. This paper was published back in 2017 by Dr. Robin. But what you see here is this one bird on the very top is found on this big mountain that is in blue near Coimbatore. The middle one is found in the middle forest, which is next to Kochi, and the bottom one is found at the very bottom mountain in Agastamalai. And the top two, if you can see, they look different. If you analyze their calls and if you hear their calls are different, and they have genetically evolved to be 2 different species. But the bottom 2 are interesting. They look the same. Their call, if you hear their song, their call sounds exactly the same. But when you analyze, you realize that it's different, and they have genetically evolved to be 2 different species. So this is really interesting because what you see here is a gradient of speciation. The top 2 species got isolated earlier, they got isolated much further, so they evolved to be 2 different species much faster. And the bottom 2 look fairly similar now. So this is really interesting because what we can see here is actually evolution in action, how one species ended up becoming 3 different species. And I found this really fascinating. Coming from science background, this was really amazing for me to get and delve deeper into the evolution that was happening right in our backyard. I don't have to look at dinosaurs or think of dinosaurs to see or think or experience or understand evolution. I could see it in the birds that were living in our backyard. And that's Dr. Robin. He ended up describing 6 new species of birds over his entire career. But when we were working on these mountains, I couldn't help but look at the larger issues that were happening on these Sky Islands. the mountains, the forest patches on these mountains are still protected and they are still intact. So Shola forests are intact, but the grasslands are entirely taken over by commercial plantations like tea, coffee, and timber, because grasslands still in India are considered as wastelands. And that's a big problem because there are so many species which are grassland specific. And that's what got our attention to this one little trap-looking bird. This bird is called as Nilgiri pipit. It's a high elevation grassland-specific bird which loves to stay in these moist sky islands or moist for mountain grasslands. And the problem is that over the last few decades and last century, when the grasslands got depleted, this bird got pushed up onto the mountaintop slowly. And now it is found on the peaks of the two highest mountains in the Western Ghats, and it has nowhere else to go. Its global distribution is less than 300 square kilometers. And this is probably going to be the first bird to go probably extinct if the climate change and habitat destruction continues at the pace at which it is going on right now. But when I started working on this bird, I started documenting it, I realized that we have this bird in our backyard. But even now, when people think about climate change in India, they think of polar bear, which is not even found in India, which is far away. I know it's icon for climate change globally, but people do not have a personal connection with that animal. And that's when Dr. Robin and I, we started thinking that how do we figure out a way to communicate this work? Documenting this was fairly easy, but communicating it was an entirely new challenge. And we wanted to figure out a way to make this bird the local icon for local change, for global issues like climate change. And it sounds really interesting, but we had no clue at that point how to do it. And we had these videos and photos and amazing stories from the Sky Islands. Robin had amazing data and scientific information from his results, but we had no clue at that point how to take this ahead. And that's when Robin decided to reach out to a friend of his. His name is Ben Mirren, who is a beatboxer. And we decided to do a project, and we reached out to National Geographic, and they were like, okay, you guys are doing something cool. Here's some money, go do it, and let's see what comes out of it. So we did what any young people excited to do something. We did a road trip. We did a road trip across Western Ghats, but this was not another exciting holiday. It was an expedition. In this, there was a photographer, filmmaker documenting this landscape, a scientist who has been studying these Sky Islands and these grasslands and these birds for the last 2 decades, and a musician who makes music out of bird songs. And we went to these landscapes where people share space with these high elevation grasslands and the Sky Island species, and we started interacting with them. And what we did is we made music out of the bird songs that Robin and I, we had collected, and Ben converted them into these amazing art pieces. So we went to these mountaintops, we started showing them these videos, Robin started talking about science, and most importantly, we got them hooked by the music that Ben created. Here's one of them. Now, this entire song was created out of Ben's vocal cords, as well as the songs of 5 high elevation Sky Island birds. And we call this entire expedition Sky Island Beatbox. And people were like, what is this Sky Island Beatbox? And we started getting a lot of attention. There are thousands of people who started coming to our so-called science concerts, science photo concerts, where Ben used to come and play his music, and hold people by their ears. I used to come and show them the beauty of this landscape with the amazing images and videos, and Robin used to come and tell them about the science and the importance and the conservation issues of these mountaintops. And we managed to reach out to a lot of people, in the span of 15 days, we reached out to thousands of people who came and attended our different concerts across the Western Ghats. And this is the headquarters of the Forest Department of Kerala. There's this is really unique that there were so many people here, and the Forest Department and national media got interested into this, and this project blew up really big. And the most important thing that came out of this entire expedition was the fact that we had people coming and telling us that, you know what, we knew that these birds live in our backyard, but today we learned that they live only in our backyard and that they are special to us. And I think that is the connection that we need to make around the world, where people connect with their local species and treat them as their landscape members and start saving them. Now, while working on this, we were getting a lot of attention towards the project. People were starting to understand what these sky islands are, what these mountains are, what the species are. And I also wanted to make a documentary out of this. So there's a small side story where I started to make this time lapse to show that these sky islands, as you can see here, are not only isolated by deep valleys, but also isolated by urbanization. Here, as you can see, the mountains are peaking and they are surrounded in the sea of urbanization. And this is a time lapse that me, along with a friend of mine, Anand Verma, we were doing high up in the mountains. And what is happening here is I've taken thousands of images. Each image is 15 seconds exposure and there's a 10 seconds gap. And out of these thousands of images, one of the image got something really out of the world, literally out of the world. Now, this is probably the only composed image of a green meteorite. And honestly, when my camera captured this, I was sleeping. But I was also one of the very few people shooting this time lapse at this time in the middle of nowhere. But what this image did is it won a bunch of contests, and it started bringing way more attention towards the largest Sky Island story that we were working. This image kind of became the face of the largest Sky Island story, as well as the landscape. And it started getting published. And when it got published really big, it started bringing even more attention to our website, which was sharing issues and stories of these Sky Islands. And the film that we made, eventually Dr. Robin and a bunch of other scientists got a chance to actually show this entire story, as well as the science, as well as the importance and conservation issues of these mountaintops to some of the judges in really big court in India, who were responsible for taking some of the policy level decisions for these Sky Islands. I don't think that the project is over. It is still going on. Dr. Robin and his colleagues are still working and still fighting to figure out a way to save these last remaining 15% of Sky Island grasslands. And it is one of the most beautiful landscapes that I've worked on till now. Thank you. If you want to know more about it, just Google Sky Islands India, and you'll find a way to reach to Robin and our website, where you'll learn much more about the Sky Island ecosystem, the science, the communication, as well as the conservation issues on this landscape. That was me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Prasenjeet. This was really, really exciting look into a part of the world that I feel a lot of us don't actually get to see or know a lot about. So thank you for taking us on that tour. Really appreciate it. So I have to ask the question, when you're taking these photos, what's it like to get photos like, let's say, that meteorite coming down? I know you said you weren't there when the camera took it, but I imagine you're going someplace remote, or you're setting up, or maybe you're with the camera. So what's it like to capture the imagery of wildlife and wild spaces?
I think it's a lot of research. Even before we step out into these mountains, for me, my process, or my work process, is essentially first few months I just research and talking to the scientists and trying to gather and learn and imbibe as much as I can know about the landscape, which helps me also decide what to focus on. We are talking about landscape level stories, which is humongous, and I can anytime get lost, and a 6 months project can become 2.5 year long affair. which actually happened in this case. It was a 6 month project, and I ended up working there for 2.5 years. So a lot of research is important. After research, I think it's a lot of knowing the landscape and going out there, identifying the set of species that you want to document. And once you know those species, that helps you decide beforehand what kind of gear you want to carry. And the most important thing is never ever be sure, or never ever even imagine that you'll end up capturing a meteorite in your camera. I got lucky once, I'm not going to get lucky again.
Well, I mean, I feel like I used to be a natural history filmmaker, so I kind of understand and feel there's a lot of preparation, like you said, getting ready, getting set up. That way, if something crazy happens or, once in a lifetime, you're there and you're ready for it. So it sounds like that's kind of a good lesson for everyone to take, is make sure you do the work, get prepared, because anything could happen when you're out exploring biodiversity.
As the wise people say, the luck favors the one who's prepared. So yeah, just try to be prepared, and you might just.
Well, and in the spirit of being prepared, what are some of the things that you have to have with you to be prepared? I know when I was out in the field, I always had to have little energy bars, just because I know I'd get hungry, and it was just quick and easy and help me get through the day. So what is the thing you have to have, whether it be a camera or gear or tech or just comfort of home?
So I live out of my camera bags. My camera bags are always packed, so I don't have to worry too much about what to carry, because it's more or less always packed, the basic kit. So I always make sure that I'm not missing out on my headlamp. I always make sure I'm not missing out on first aid kit, because it's important and I always tend to forget it. And then whenever I get a chance, whichever shop, I always have Snicker bars in my bag. They are always in. I mean, if I go and start looking, I wouldn't be surprised if I find 15, 20 of them in different bags somewhere. So when I'm in field, I kind of live on these Snicker bars. Yeah.
I mean, those are the energy bars before they were energy bars. It was packed full of everything. So when you were looking through the Sky Islands, I know that a big part of what you were trying to do was, have people, have an animal that they could connect with. And why is that so important for people to be able to connect climate change to something local? What makes that so important for all communities?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question, and I've been toying with it for a while, and I started realizing that although I have nothing against polar bears, I love them. I would love to see one in
how
person.
Can you not?
But the fact is, I haven't seen one in person. So if it is going away, it can affect me only to a certain extent. But if I see a bird every day, or if I see an insect every day, or if I'm connected to a certain species, I've seen it, I've experienced it, I think it has a different level of impact on me when I hear that a particular species is going away for or because of my actions.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that local connection is extremely important, that personal connection with these species. And that's why we all around the world should start finding species which are in our backyard and make them the local icons for local action against global changes like climate change, or maybe what's happening right now with the COVID situation.
So, I mean, as in all things, it's think globally, act locally. So connect and get to know the animals around you, make sure you're going out and doing, getting out in the environment around you, maybe getting little bio walks in, which you can share with us. We'd love to see that. And actually, Prasenjeet, I have to say, you've got me here in DC, we've got you in India. We've also got viewers watching us from the United Kingdom. I can't tell if that's, it's Austria, Belgium, Kenya, Serbia, and Ukraine. So it's great to know that we've got Eastern Europe, a little bit of the Balkans kind of, checking in, and Western Europe, and of course, Kenya, which is amazing to have checking out. Get some great wildlife there everywhere. So it's been really great to talk with you about, focusing local, getting to know the animals around you, and of course, how important it is to have good stories to connect people to the work that you're doing. So when was it that you knew that you wanted to kind of leave science behind and really focus on the storytelling?
The point when after almost 2.5 years of working on a particular publication, when I published it, it came out. It was a big deal for me and my career. But the fact that uh, that many of my friends and my family couldn't understand the technical language in it. And that's when I was like, okay, I also enjoy a lot of storytelling. I enjoy communicating the science that I'm studying, as well as other scientific stuff. I grew up, and most of my friends still call me a nerd, someone who always figures out a way to bring a scientific fact in the conversation. So
This is
I
why
was
we're
like,
friends.
this is what I love to do. So why not figure out a way to do it full time? And I'm still figuring out a way to do it full time, but that's what I do. I think that was time. And I think it's really important that in the world that we are living, where we tend to consume science a lot, we tend to take the best of the science, but we also take it for granted. And the moment the science asks us to act on it or to do something sensible, that's when we tend to ignore science. So I think it's really important that we start communicating science, because it is as important as practicing it in today's world.
So, and on that note, what's a one small thing that someone can do, whether it be to share science or do something in their backyard? What's the one thing that maybe you'd recommend someone do that can help you and help all of us, communicate science in a way? Put you on the spot, sorry.
No, I think the only one thing that everyone can do is just be curious, and be curious in the right way. Curious and ask questions. Why is this happening the way it is happening? And right now, we are living in the wonderful era where knowledge is accessible on our fingertips. We literally can Google everything that's happening around us. How does a matchstick lights? There is science in it. We are surrounded by science, and we are surrounded by biodiversity. So use apps like iNaturalist and eBirds, and you can learn about your backyard wildlife. Use Google, and you can learn what's the science behind lighting up a matchstick or turning our fan on. And just be curious and try and know more. And if you keep asking questions, you indirectly are doing favor to cut down on the fake news.
Yeah.
Because you'll start questioning everything, and you'll find ways to find the right answer. Wow.
And that advice applies to so many things, not just, biodiversity, but just being better engaged with the world around you, and being, tapped into knowledge and thinking, and questioning, which is always a great thing. And that's how the scientific method works. And we've got our next host joining in, Jesse. Meet Prasenjeet. Prasenjeet, meet Jesse. And
pleasure.
Hi.
I've been watching the whole time. I aspire to your level of photography, but I do like that you highlight Snickers bars, because they are the best thing to take wherever you go. Along with Ferrero Rocher, which every country on earth has Ferrero Rocher. If you look hard enough, very exciting.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you,
Prasenjeet. Wes, and good luck for your talk, Jess.